Good morning, Mark. Great to have you here today with me. Thank you for coming out. You've been gracious enough to give some of your time, and you've been gracious in many ways in the past as being a friend of my family and a good brother, leader, and somebody that I admire in business and somebody that is up to great things. So when I reached out to you to ask you if you'd be interested in coming over and having a chat to talk about what you've been up to, I think I mentioned that this series here is part of something new where, what we talked about in the past is, I go looking for leaders who are on the verge of doing new things, doing great things, and they just need, or they would find value in telling their story to the world in a different way, in a unique format.
Yeah.
This series that we're launching is a faith series, and we are looking, and talking with leaders who are walking by faith, not by sight. And I would love to, in a few minutes, we'll talk about that a little bit more, what that means to you. And but before we dive into that, Mark Greaves, the co-founder of Tithe Lending.
Yep, Tithe correct? Lending. That's right. Yeah.
Give us some background. What have you been up to? Tell us a little bit about your story of how you got to where you're at today and who you've worked with over the years. And you're in entrepreneurial mode now, launching a new venture, but that has not always been the case in the same shape and form. But what can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Well, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. I'm really pumped to do this and tell a little bit of the story, and love that I'm here on the Faith series because that's had a lot to do with it. But so I've been in mortgage lending for 17 years, since back in 2006. So there's been a lot of different waves and things happen over 17 years. So it's been a little bit of a ride.
Big ups and downs.
Yeah. And then 2023 is going to be no exception to that. So, so most recently I was the president of Lower.com, a local staple here in Columbus. A lot of folks really learned who we were after the stadium naming for New Crew Stadium downtown and things of that nature. But been in leadership roles. I've run sales, leadership development, a lot of our training, kind of HR, hiring related functions, things of that nature. Prior to that, I was at a smaller bank, and then prior to that, a big bank, Wells Fargo. So, a lot of interesting things that I've seen over the years, and that's led me to this moment where we're going to be launching Tithe. We anticipate being operational here in March. We're ready to go now. We're just kind of final nuts and bolts of putting together a lending company are taking place. But starting here in Q1 2023 is our new venture, and it's got a faith-based approach to it, of honoring God and loving our neighbor. So the concept of a tithe is 10% traditionally given as an offering, and we'll be sending 10% of our top line revenue for every transaction that we complete into our foundation for charitable works in the community.
Very good. When you say we, who else is part of your story?
My business partner, Brian Zemer, he's our co-founder and chief operating officer. Brian and I have been together doing work for better part of about 15 years. We're kind of, we complete each other from the business standpoint. So I'm more sales and networking and relationships and driving business through the door. And Brian is more of an operational mind, efficiencies, back-end fulfillment, legal, all that stuff that I don't really want to play much of a part in. But Brian and I have always connected through faith, and he's a longtime mortgage professional. He's a little older than I. He's got about 25 years in the business, and really, as conversations took hold throughout 2022, we really wanted more of a mission focus around our work, especially for the back half of our careers, and that's where kind of Tithe was born. And he's going to be attacking this with me head on.
That's great. Those lifelong business partners, friends, peers that you would trust with your family, with your finances, let them carry your golf clubs in your back of their car. Those types of people.
Brian would love that. Yeah. He's a big golfer. So.
As long as they bring them back in one shape. But even if not, it doesn't matter because the relationship has enough trust that you give them the keys to the house. And a good friend of mine used to always call it refrigerator rights. You have certain people in your life that you come over The fridge is open all the time, and even if I'm not there, you can tackle my fridge if you're brave enough to.
Well, I've been to Brian's house. I don't. I would. His fridge is usually pretty bare, so he's gonna have to up his game on that.
Yeah. Well, that's why he's got you, I guess. Yeah. I mentioned the faith series is one where looking for stories of people who are not just doing what they're doing because they see with their eyes the indications of a great market opportunity. Yeah. And not to belittle that or downplay the need for wise business leaders who see an opportunity and go chase it. And because we all have a ton of respect for that. But what drew me to you is that as I listened to your story and we got to sharing notes and things like that, is you are embarking on a venture where if you only look at what your eyes see, if you only look at the circumstances, you probably have a long list of reasons not to do it. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you see, what you and the business team that you put together see, and how you're going forward in light of that?
Well, it is a long list. I'm glad you brought that up, because walking by faith and not by sight is something that we're going to definitely have to do starting out this year. So what I see is economic uncertainty, coming recession, or we're already in one, depending on what you're looking at. Mm-hmm. High interest rates, worst housing market supposedly in our country in decades, one of the worst mortgage environments maybe since I've been alive. So if I was walking purely by sight, this potentially is the worst year ever to launch a mortgage company or a lending company. So we're launching a mission, because what I've seen and what Brian sees is that in these moments when things are dark, whether it's in an industry or whether it's in a country or culturally, or when there's a need that needs to be fulfilled, mm-hmm. and it's dark, when a light comes in, or somebody that is optimistic, has a real plan, has a real heart for why they're doing it, and takes those steps in faith, it becomes extremely attractive. So this could be the best time ever to start something in our business that's more mission focused, where instead of it being, like you pointed out, just about the business, just about profit, just about something that we know how to do to try to make a buck, mm-hmm. rather than focus on ourselves, when it's outwardly focused towards others, and we actually want to make an impact in our community and do something real that outlives us, that leaves a legacy and leaves a mark, and the business is just fueling that, that's something that can be a magnetic pull. Mm-hmm. Like, we've often subscribed to the idea that we were pushed by drives and pulled by values, and drives are more motivational things, whether it's money or ego or flexibility or, the way that we're perceived. But values pull us. And that's really what means more to Brian and I, is how can we honor God through our business? How can we go love our neighbor in our communities? How can we make an impact for customers, partners, vendors, and those that we interact with? Mm-hmm. And then also use that to go benefit someone else that's in need somewhere else around town. It's a big value pull for us. And mm-hmm. that's why we're starting this now. Mm-hmm. And there's never been a better time for that than right now. Mm. So that's how we see it.
It's a bold step.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's exciting and maybe terrifying at the same time. Those experiences go hand in hand. Not to imply that your team and you as a leader don't believe in it, but we're all human, right? And as leaders, we take a step of faith on Monday, and sometimes on Friday we say, "Why did I take that step of faith?" Yeah. and that's the humanity and the beauty of it, of the story, is that even though you have those moments, you keep putting one foot in front of the other, and until the purpose or the values pull you elsewhere in a different direction, you're going to keep your hand down.
There's a lot to be afraid of. I mean, if you look around, fear is something that's just so prevalent in our society these days, and it's almost, sometimes I feel like fear is just advertised to us on a regular basis.
Sure, so, it is. It really is.
Whether it's fear of death, or fear of, not having community and being an outsider in some way, or fear of not leaving a mark. Basically there's all kinds of different things that we're afraid of. Chaos, uncertainty. And there's more and more of that. So if we looked at only what we're afraid of, we would never act. We'd be frozen. It would almost be like we were just standing still all the time. So what helps us get over our fear is exactly what you've labeled this series, which is faith. Like, we have faith that there's more to this, that this life is part of a bigger picture, and we have a role to play in it. And there's opportunity and doors that open every day And if we're paying attention, we'll see what those opportunities look like. We have to listen for it. We have to focus on it. But the fear can be overwhelming at times. But when you have a faith in something larger and you know that you're a piece of that puzzle, it gives you a little bit more courage to go act, knowing that there's not really a mistake that can't be undone, or there's not something that is going to happen in this lifetime that's going to be that one thing defines you forever. It's a process, and having faith to take steps, and that's where the path starts to form. If you want to see the whole picture before you start and you let your fear overtake you, you'll never start. You'll be sitting there at the starting line your whole life. So having the faith to start taking steps and watch that path form in front of you, that's what we're doing here.
How did you learn, or how did you find the courage to take that step? Was it, I'm surrounded by people who believe in me? Was it, I have an internal sense of a good footing and a firm foundation underneath me, so regardless of whether I roll a double six or a double zero in this matter, it will be okay? Where does your courage come from?
Well, I would say over the course of the last 2-3 years has really developed a lot of my courage and a lot of this. I feel like sometimes we dream too small, and we kind of put our dreams in like a little bit of a box because we don't think that we could actually achieve more. What I've noticed is by starting to dream bigger, things can happen. Things materialize, but it's often not because they just kind of like poof out of nowhere. Usually it's through relationships or through network, or someone coming into your life at the right moment that introduces either an idea or a solution to a problem that you had or what was a potential roadblock. So these last couple of years, I journal a lot, I write a lot, so I have a good base of things I can go back and return to, which is really cool in these kind of moments, because when I'm writing down ideas that pop into your head, or something that you feel compelled to go do, or a tug, which that tug I believe is the Holy Spirit, but something that you feel in your heart that you need to go fill that gap.
Yeah.
I write about that. I have a process around that every morning where I journal, I read, whether it's the Bible, I pray. And as I'm writing down my thoughts, now I have a memory bank that I can go back and reread some of my journal entries from 6 months ago, 8 months ago, 10 months ago. And I start to notice relationships that form, or different little windows of opportunity that present themselves. And a lot of times if they're in alignment with what I'm feeling I'm being tugged to do, now I just have the faith to step into that, where I didn't always. But once you do a couple of times.
Because you couldn't see it or connect the dots.
Couldn't see it, couldn't connect the dots, or I was just too afraid to get out of my comfort zone or do something outside of the norm. What I would encourage everybody to do is, once you do it once or twice and you realize that it's not really that scary, even if it doesn't work, usually there's an alternative or there's a different path that you can just audible out to. But a lot of times it does. Sometimes we step out in faith and there's things that we're not totally comfortable doing, and I've got a lot of examples of that, where all of a sudden a new relationship takes place, or someone that you're introduced to has exactly what you needed, or a missing link to get farther down the path towards your goal. And those things start to happen, but if you never took the step, you would have never met that person. And all of a sudden things start to they become a little bit more clear. So if you're riding in a boat, you got to get out of the dock a little bit sometimes to feel the waves and feel the wind and kind of sense the direction.
That safe shelter where
you stay at the dock and you stay in the harbor your entire life, you never really know because you're too afraid of what the wind and the waves look like. Get out there and feel it a little bit and see where it takes you. And all of a sudden direction starts to form. Yeah.
What does the phrase, as a leader, to develop a listening heart mean to you? And how, if you give some color or examples, something practical or anything that you'd be willing to share of how that has either helped what you're doing today or something that has helped a turning point in the past, a prior story.
Yeah, wisdom's an interesting word. I've never felt like I had it or that I was wise necessarily. But you're right exactly that a listening heart is the key to unlocking the wisdom that is inside of us. What I do, I already mentioned kind of, my journal and the things that I do and how I hear and listen. So I don't listen for audible. I'm never going to get a command necessarily that I just hear that pierces through my brain and into my heart and makes me go act. A lot of times it's more subtle than that, or it's through a relationship or another person or a conversation or just a series of perceived coincidences that seem to line up and be like, okay, this is something I need to go pursue. But I write. I feel like everyone has like a different method of getting their thoughts and the things that they're feeling down. And what I do every single day is I write. I have a couple of different journals. I have a prayer journal. That's impactful for me. I have just a daily activity journal, so I can go back and track my time and see where was I spending it. Where was the opportunity cost of where I didn't spend it?
Are you writing with pen on paper?
Pen and paper.
And you take these things, and when you're done, you put it somewhere. Is there a vault in your house?
There's a big drawer full of them, yeah. So the reason I write with a pen, and why this is like if you're actually listening and you're trying to have a listening heart through wisdom, is if we're typing, what ends up happening is you misspell a word, and what does it do? It underlines it in red or underlines a grammar sentence in blue, so you're constantly backspacing. It's hard to get into a flow and really feel yourself think if you're constantly backspacing your thoughts to recorrect a word or a phrase. So when you write on paper, we don't write thoughts down and paragraphs appear. You put a pen to a paper and you're writing a single letter on a word. So you might be able to think in terms of like the next sentence you're going to write, maybe even 2 sentences. But if you're writing on a page, there's no way to predict what you'll be writing at the end of that page when you first begin. So after you first begin, like your thoughts begin to flow, and all of a sudden real truth starts to come out about the way you feel about a topic or a direction that's forming in your head about something you're going to pursue. So I'd encourage everybody to try it. Do
you ever write things at the bottom of the page that surprise you?
Every time. Every time it usually takes me somewhere that I didn't necessarily think I was going to go. A lot of my writing ends up becoming a prayer. So what I notice throughout my writing are the things that are coming out that I'm grateful for, whether it's, I've already mentioned a relationship, or whether it's some sort of an epiphany about an action that I'm going to take.
Sure.
And at the end, I always thank God for giving me those revelations, and I finish it with an amen and my initials every single time.
It's beautiful.
So, yeah, thoughts end up becoming a prayer on paper to God for his revelation of whatever wisdom he was giving me.
Yeah. It's a beautiful process. And many have said they write so that they can learn, and they learn so that they can write. What I hear you saying is you write so that you can hear, and you hear so that you can write. It's a cyclical process of committing to, because it's noisy out there, right? There's a lot of voices, a lot of noise, a lot of messages that fill our eyes and ears, and to get to the heart of your own soul of why is Mark here? What time is it for Mark? There's 2 notions of time. There's Chronos and Kairos. There's Chronos being, in our culture, the actual thing on your wrist. It's 2 p.m. It's 2:30. It's the again, if we were to, as a metaphor, the Chronos God that we serve says, you're out of time. You don't have enough time. You strive harder, push harder. Excuse me. It's a taskmaster, that is always constantly pushing, prodding, and saying, you're never enough. You haven't done enough. You need to do more. And if you don't, someone else will take, and you'll be left with nothing. So strive, push, drive, and do whatever you have to. And it creates a lot of anxiety. And then you have Kairos time, which is, again, the Kairos God, if we say it that way, comes into our life and says, well, what is this time for? What is this season for? And what are you for? And if you have a listening heart, or you're inclined to, what do you hear your maker or the divine or whoever you want to, call that? We didn't make ourselves. What does that voice tell you this time is for? So how, if any thoughts there, being a business leader, being a father, you have times in your life where that question, what is this time for, spoke loud and clear to you?
Yeah, I think, so whether it's in business or being a former athlete or whatever it was.
What sport did you play, by the way?
Oh, the most manly sport available to me. I played volleyball. So wouldn't you call that the most manly?
I would. The speed and the tenacity on the court of that ball. I mean, I would duck and cover and run.
I mean, it was awesome, but yeah, I always say that my wife picked me because it was, I played the most.
You got the height and you got the wingspan. And
right. We're a bunch of lanky, tall, not very muscular guys. Yeah.
No, I love the sport. My daughter, she's played for 8 years in club, and that's all I've watched.
But yeah, I mean, to speak to the time aspect of things, there's always, it seems to be like this like countdown of like, okay, everything I'm doing is at the opportunity cost of something else. So am I doing the thing that's going to have the most impact right now? Is this going to get me the farthest ahead right now? And it's easy to think that, especially when like you're a young business person or a young man or anything in general, or a young lady. And so you're always trying to get ahead, but get ahead to what? Get where? So there is this no ahead moment. And that's the one thing I've started to notice is that we're not going to just get to this place where we look back and we're like, okay, good. I got farther along in the race by a designated time than other people that are in my same age. So now I just get the rest. And like, what are we doing it for, right? So the Kairos stuff is extremely important when you're, thinking in terms of fatherhood or faith or anything else. It's what do I want to go instill into my kids? And then thinking it in that regard, it's like, what is God trying to instill into me? Like if I'm a child of God first, and that's my heavenly Father, does he want me just spinning my wheels down here? Is it a race? So that when I get up to heaven someday, he's like, hey, guess what? You ran faster than everybody else. And that's exactly what I was looking for. Or does he want me to have a relationship with him and really invest into my life and understand my gifts and my calling and his will for me and how my purpose fits into his bigger picture and his bigger plan here? And if I'm doing that and I'm in alignment and I have that kind of a relationship, is that not the goal? So when I'm trying to impart that down into my kids as a father, which it's tough to be a father. There's so many different things that come in and, you're, whether it's school, whether it's friends, whether it's, different sports, whether it's, different things that they're pursuing. Or it's tough to like navigate everything through fatherhood and get it all right. But what I've noticed that what my kids really want from me is dedicated time, and they want my love. That's really all they want. They don't necessarily know how much I know. They're not worried about how successful I am. They don't care if Tithe is the best mortgage company that's ever existed, or if it's just a little one here in Columbus. Like, that's not on their radar. What they want me to do is go build a snowman with them and invest in some time outside with them and teach them some things and wrestle with them and give them a hug and love them. Like, that's what they want.
Yeah. They just want you.
Exactly. Right. And that's, lo and behold, that's what God wants. He wants the relationship with us. He wants us to spend time with him. He wants us to pursue him and his will for us. And that's what my kids want. They want my time. They want my love. They want me to pursue a relationship with them. So it's really not that complicated. I feel like just being a product of our environment and our culture, we overcomplicate time. It's not really a race, and it's not really a get ahead type of a thing. It's really investing into the things that we think are the most important. And that's actually what getting ahead looks like.
It's a totally different perspective and definition of significance. Yeah. And I want to shift us with our remaining time and kind of build off of that, because clearly your passion for your own kids and being, you told me your number one leadership responsibility is to be a dad. It's them. And every time I talk with you, it comes out in conversation that I'm there for my boys. I'm there for my children. And I'm sure that passion has shaped the external facing purpose of your new venture. And can you talk to me a little bit about the strategy for how Tithe lending and the foundation that eventually will be associated with it, its focus, who it aims to help? And I know kids are a big part of that, and why.
So one of our value statements, we have four. So fourth value statement is to gain an exponential return on investment for the kingdom. We want to maximize the ROI for impact for the kingdom. So what that means to us is working through kids. Because you're right, like my kids are my number one leadership assignment. They're the only ones that were actually given to me, like specifically, that I have to foster throughout their lives. So when I look at them and I see, the opportunities that are created in their life through the things that I'm doing, and then I see the void in other children's lives in our city and different communities all around the country. Whether that's actually physical food, not getting their third meal, they eat first and second meal at school, and then they go home and there's not a third meal for them, whether that's intellectually and being tutored and learning how to read to their grade level. And sometimes there's just not that opportunity for them, or it's actually the Word of God. It's spiritually. It's understanding that they have value and they're loved by their Creator. Those three things are huge for a kid's life. So if we can go introduce those resources and provide those opportunities early, we get the exponential effect of their entire lifetime, and the web effect of where that could take from that investment, we can't really measure right now up front.
Yeah.
So yeah, we believe in investing into kids and creating opportunities and resources where they don't exist. And we're going to do that through the Tithe Foundation.
Okay.
Which, like I already said, 10% of our revenue will travel there to go make impact for the kingdom. Yeah.
Off of every mortgage.
Every transaction,
it
automatic
just
10% donation. Yeah.
And at the same time, I'm sure the door is open for partners on that side.
Yeah.
That have a shared passion for kids and the future, the next generation.
So far, we've had a great response. So there can be more done through our work than we know. Not everyone can go out and do full-time ministry, or everyone can be a full-time missionary. If that was the case and everyone went to do that, it wouldn't work very well. There needs to be ministers in the marketplace through business who are able to fuel these types of things. And I've met a lot of folks around town who, whether it's through real estate or through lending or through another spoke business that would potentially touch what we're trying to do, that have a heart to go do these things, but maybe they just didn't have the avenue. They didn't have the right relationship or the right invitation in to do something. And so far, we've been inviting folks in, and we've had a resounding response. People want to go play a part. They want to do something bigger, and they want to have more meaning in their work.
Yeah.
And we're showing them the path to do those things.
Yeah. There's an enabling side of your concept in the model that as you talk about it, it resonates. You hear an echo inside of other business like-minded leaders, and they say, I've thought similar thoughts many times, many years, but to have an execution path, whether they're a partner with you, or maybe it's someone you meet or listens to your story, and they just say that model, that approach. Yep. Mark, can you teach me how to do that? You inspired me. I'm in a different industry, different stage of life, different thing, but I want to do something of similar purpose and value. So I would not be surprised if over the next...
That's already happened a couple of times.
Really?
Yeah, it's happened a couple of times where they kind of see the fire that we have lit at Tithe and where that comes from. And they think similarly, but they've just never taken the steps themselves. Maybe it was out of fear. Maybe it was just that they didn't see the path clearly, so they didn't take step one. Well, now that they're watching us take step one and step two, and they're seeing how that path is forming and how people are reacting to it, they want to know, hey, what are the steps? Who do you know? How could I do it in my business? Is there ways that you can connect some of these dots for me because I have a similar goal in mind? And yeah, those have already started to happen.
Sooner than you imagined.
Yeah, way sooner.
You thought public launch first.
Yeah, and
success,
then people will see.
Then talk.
Yeah.
And now people are talking soon.
Yep.
When is your public or your start?
We're targeting first week of March. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for your time. Thanks for being a great friend to me, my family, and reach out anytime about how we can connect. I just hear connecting your idea to other like-minded people who want to do the same thing. I think there's a long line of leaders out there.
Yeah.
And if I can help at any point make those connections.
Well, you already have. And yeah, I appreciate everything. I appreciate this opportunity. And
you got a great story, Mark.